So this is the moment you've all been waiting for, recruitment. I mean, the course is called Recruitment and Selection, yet we waited after so many sections to get to recruitment. But keep in mind, it is important to cover background information to get you to a certain point. I like it when we cover off what's influential to a core topic before we start on the core topic itself. Now, this particular session might be the simplest for many of you because you know what recruitment is. Many of you have been recruited. Actually, all of you have been recruited. You've been recruited to Seneca College as a student. I've been recruited to Seneca College as an educator. So recruitment in itself is, I mean, it's not a difficult process. It's like just getting people to notice your organization, your job, and applying for it. Simple. It's not selection. Selection is the next part. We're going to talk about that in the next session. Now, we're going to revisit this diagram that we started in session 1. And it's that standard kind of recruitment selection model. And again, keep in mind, we're going to stretch recruitment selection from that robot point of view to overall total talent management. Now, aside from recruiting people, getting them to apply, applicants, converting to candidates, selecting the best of those candidates and hiring them, talent management. Remember, recruitment selection is simply getting talent to work for you. But after that, when you involve compensation, performance management, HR planning, which includes letting people go outbound, when you include elements of, let's say, health and safety, that is what talent management is all about. Recruitment is one part, we get it. But call yourself a talent management specialist so that you are working with people from all these other areas of HR. But let's go to this diagram. Recruitment only starts after there's demand. And I got to be honest, this course isn't really about demand itself. That's your HR planning course. You're taking that right now. Pay attention. Although you're not going to get a specialist job in HR planning, you might be doing it. You might be on a team doing it. So the more you know about it, I think it's one of those little hidden things in HR that people shy away from. Entire departments shy away from it because there aren't enough people who know anything about it. That might be your role. Consultants do it as well. It's a bit of economics, I guess. We'll cover off a few principles around that today in this session. But unless you have a demand for somebody or more than one person, you can't recruit. I mean, it's possible to recruit people just to have resumes on hand, without actually having a demand. I get it. That could happen. General Motors did it several years ago just to be ready for a new shift. There's organizations just actively recruiting people, even though there's no jobs. They just want to have this huge applicant pool so that when they actually need somebody, they're ready to go. There's some ethical issues around that, I suppose. I mean, why would you get the hopes up for people if there's no actual job? Well, I mean, I'm a believer that my resume should be everywhere in the hopes that one day somebody will connect it with the job that they need to get done and they'll call me. So it's in the interest of applicants everywhere, whether there's a job or not, just to get their resume everywhere anyways. So why can't I do that as an organization? But let's say we did have a demand. We forecasted that we have a demand. And we can't just assume that there's a supply available. So forecasting demand, forecasting supply is very important. But how can I assume that if I have a demand 2 years from now, that they're going to be ready and willing people to work for me, the supply? Not necessarily true. And you also have to look at it from another perspective. And the current situation is actually important in that case. The COVID-19, the pandemic. There's a lot of businesses, a lot of businesses who've had to close. Not go out of business, but just close. Either because of fear or it's the right ethical thing to do to contain this virus. But also governments have demanded that certain businesses close. Now, during this time, of course, there is a low demand. There are some businesses that have a zero demand. No employees working for them at all. Now, some businesses like Seneca, we're fortunate. There's still a demand, although we're allowed to work from home. But imagine a retail store where there's no demand for retail employees. Some businesses, if they have money, they have cash flow, they can keep those employees on board, pay them, so they still have the employees working for them. There's no new demand, and the supply is still there. Those people are being paid by you. They're not doing anything that's generous. But I don't think too many businesses can afford to keep doing that. Governments, of course, are subsidizing wages, salaries, to keep the workforce going. But here's an opportunity, I think. And by the way, it's not the first time the world has seen this. We've seen it several times before, and we always bounce back. Our stock markets are always risen to record highs. Our economy booms and echoes once in a while. But let's look at it from this perspective. If there's a whole sector of our economy where employees right now are not working, they're laid off. I mean, some of them will be permanently let go. There are a lot of businesses that are filing for bankruptcy. They can't sustain it. And maybe, perhaps, it was just a matter of time anyways. Like a lot of retailers, I think. Food industry, leisure industries. Bottom line, if you just don't have the money for survival, you're not going to survive. But remember, there's a reason these businesses were in place to begin with. They've been around for years. But because of this pandemic, they can't afford to stay afloat. So when all of this settles, and I'm convinced it will gradually in a matter of months, within a year, 12 months, that when it comes back, the public is going to want those services again. You know, when a hotel is suffering right now, and they just hang in there, that hotel was there for a reason. People are going to want hotels again. The problem is that the people who they had to let go, are they going to be willing participants in that labor market? We don't know. I don't think so. I think this is going to be an opportunity for a lot of people who for years have been asking, should I change companies, businesses? Should I change industries, careers? And this is going to be a wake-up call where they're going to be willing to work in other areas, geographical areas, possibly different jobs, different industries. You know, take old age homes, nursing homes, or senior care facilities. There's a lot of people, healthcare professionals, who, because of fear for their own lives, and rightfully so, if you've got children at home yourself, you might not want to work in that environment. And they're leaving. So there's a huge demand in senior care facilities right now for personal care workers, healthcare professionals, the military stepping in to help. But when everything gets solved, there's a vaccine or so on, many of those people will return, but many might say, you know, I don't want to work in that environment. I'm going to go do something else. And that might just cause problems for our labor market. You take a small town in the north where winters are harsh, there's black flies in the summer, mosquitoes, but it's amazing. The air is clean, it's a great lifestyle, safe, great community. Would they have the same demand for a doctor as a big city would? Of course they would. They still need a doctor. Is it possible that somebody who used to work in Toronto as a physician making $400,000, $500,000 might then decide, hey, I'm going to move to a small town. I think it's safer. Possibly. And take a pay cut. So there's going to be a lot of people in our society who are participating in the labor force, our economy, who are now simply going to just say, look, I got to change my life, my lifestyle. So there's going to be a huge, interesting change in the way we recruit and how we look at demand. So it could be an opportunity for you in your organization to have a look at those people who are going to leave industries altogether, who are in transition right now, who are at home because there's no job for them, for you to figure out where are they looking, where are their minds, where's their attention, and go grab them, go snatch them up before somebody else does. And look, if you're running a hotel and you're going to need more people later on, you can't just say, I'll take anybody I can get. No. Remember, recruitment is the start of the process of getting the best people with the highest qualities that your money can afford. Here's a huge opportunity for you to kind of figure out, where are these people and how can I get them? Right? Think about it. So, demand gets initiated for a number of reasons. Actually, sorry, I want to cover this off first. The idea of position control. I'm not sure if you know this. You might have learned it in some other course, but a job itself is simply a job title. A job is not a person. A job has a job description. It's just one. HR coordinator, for example. And again, we have a really good title, coordinator. It's not, I'm not calling it manager or executive or director. It's HR coordinator. I could use words like associate, partner, assistant. That's fine, but it's a coordinator. Now, that HR coordinator job in my company requires 3 people to do it. 3. Why? Because I have so many employees. Each coordinator deals with a group of employees. So right now, position 1 of 3 is occupied by Jack Stone. Position 2 by Sally Jones. And position 3, guess what? We don't have anybody. It's vacant. That's called a demand. That person who used to be in position 3 maybe left. Maybe they were just temporarily let go because of COVID and they're not coming back. They're going to go somewhere else. They got an opportunity. So we have to fill that vacant position. So using position control and organizational chart, so on, you want to focus your attention on vacant. Now, how do I fill that? Do I just go to resumes that I had from the past and say, hey, you want to work for me? Yeah, sure. Why not? You can ask Jack Stone and Sally Jones for referrals. Now, if, let's say, Sally Jones had 4 people under her reporting to her, you might go to one of them and ask, hey, do you want to be promoted? Maybe. Sometimes, though, we don't have that luxury. Maybe people within your organization who could be promoted either don't want to be promoted or they just don't possess the competencies required for the job. It's too early. Look at Seneca. I do a job. I'm an educator, official title professor. And there's about 1,600 people who do the same job that I do. Now, above me is my boss, who is the chair of the department. And the chair's boss is the dean, and the dean's boss is the vice president academic, and that person's boss would be the president. Now, if you were to ask me, hey, do you want to be promoted to become the boss, the chair? I would say no. And that might be a shock, saying, what, after all these years, you don't want to be promoted? Listen, I could make a few more dollars if I wanted to, and that's fine. But I choose not to. I don't want to be an administrator. I don't want to administer. I want to be an actor. I want to be a producer. I want to produce the stuff I'm doing now. I feel like I own a radio station, or I'm doing a vlog or a podcast. Of course, you're my captive audience. Thank you very much. But I don't want to do it. So now Seneca's HR department has to be more creative to try to replace me. Now, were they to ask me, okay, you don't want that job, but do you know anybody? I would gladly give my opinion, factual or not, on others around me who might take that job. Or more likely, if you need to infuse new creativity, new ideas, new vision, maybe somebody from the outside. And we've done that before. So that's position control. It gives you a perspective on what's vacant and what's not. Now, let's get back to demand. How is demand initiated? Like, how does your organization know they need people? Do you just willy-nilly say, yeah, I'm going to hire 2 more people? Yeah. There's organizations like Walmart. If you look at those greeters at the front door, you don't need greeters, okay? You don't need people checking your bag as you leave. But Walmart is doing some pretty good work. They're giving disadvantaged people those jobs, either seniors or people with mental health difficulties. Those jobs that otherwise wouldn't exist. So they just literally, they didn't have a need for it, but they just say, yeah, we're going to do it. It's a public relations move, I guess. But quite often, demand is initiated by new business or growth. You know, if part of your business plan forecasts that in 2 years we're going to increase our demand for our product by 30% because there's my biggest customer is going to expand, then naturally you're going to need 30% more activity and you're going to need more people to do that. You could initiate demand through retirement of people, death, termination even. So when a person leaves for whatever reason, that creates a void, a vacancy. Now, a lot of organizations might say, okay, you've left. I think we could do without you. And that's fine. During really good economic times, organizations do fluff up their workforce. Just have more people, maybe bragging rights, or just to be on the ready. But at some point, they have to realize we don't need those people. Or they might need them, but we're just going to have to work without them. And I'll tell you right now, Seneca College, because of COVID-19 pandemic, offered early retirement to anybody who wanted it. And it's a cost-saving measure to pay out money today to save money in the next few years because salaries could be high. 80 people out of 1,600 took Seneca up on that. It's around 26 weeks of additional money plus a generous pension. Now, those 80 people, you have to ask yourself, did we really need them? Why were they there all these years? Of course we needed them to run our courses. But Seneca's reacting to a lack of demand. Although, we're okay. This summer, you guys are coming back. It's great. But throughout the college, there are programs where people just aren't going to enroll. Either because they don't want to do online, they don't know anything about it, or most likely it's the international students who the government says you have to be here. And because of that, Seneca, it says those 80 people we don't need now. Now, will we be replacing those 80 people? Yeah, of course. We can't grow as an institution if you let 80 people go. Who's going to be in the classroom? What are we going to do? Oh my God, it just occurred to me. Seneca's going to use this video I'm recording right now, and that will be your course. There's no need for me anymore. Automation. No, I don't think that's going to happen. That's not part of Seneca's plan or vision. But yeah, so those 80 people will be replaced at some point, but they'll be replaced with lower paid people because not everybody is making a tenured salary. Demand could be initiated by regulatory needs. Governments might actually come down and say, wait, you need this type of a person on staff? For example, health and safety, when that law changed, Occupational Health and Safety Act, and the penalties went down to jail term, a lot of organizations started having certified health and safety professionals on staff. There was very little demand for it before, but now it's exploding demand. If government says that to operate this type of equipment, you need 3 certified people on staff now, whereas before it was only 2, now all of a sudden, you need another person. In the banking industry, they never used to have regulatory affairs officers, oversight officers. No bank would pay for that. But now the government demands it, and for the last, couple of decades, you need these people. If you ever watch a TV show called Billions, it's that guy, the annoying guy. They need him there, they don't want him there, but you got to do it. It could be short-term expertise needs. I need somebody to come in and handle this particular customer. I need a designer to help me with the design of this new product. I don't need them permanently. It's what we call the gig economy. Many of you will participate in it, albeit difficult in HR, where you do contracts 6 months, 1 year, move on to the next one. Not consulting. It's a whole different thing. But gigs, little gigs. Why not? So there's a variety of ways that demand is initiated, and we're going to talk about indexation next. And again, I'm only bringing this up in very general terms. Your HR planning course is going to give you a lot more detail. Now, how do we get information about the demand? Like, is it something that just HR sits there and says, I think we need somebody? Well, yeah, if it's an HR person, an HR department can say, you know what? This summer we're going to need 2 assistants because we're going to need more employees to manage. Canada's Wonderland, right around February, if they were to be open, they're recruiting 4,400 people every year. They might need short-term HR people just to help with that process, and then you get let go in October. I get that. But quite often we use expert judgments by managers. The actual manager, supervisor, says, I need 3 more people to operate a machine. Sales manager says, I need 2 more salespeople. Now, if HR is smart and they're keeping staffing tables, so you look at patterns, during the year, this is the number of people I need, this is when I need to let them go. Retail does that a lot. Retail has a lot of people around the holiday times, Christmas time, in December. Then you have to let them go. And that shows up on a staffing table. I'll show you an example in a minute. You might have succession planning tables. Those are like org charts with additional information. I'll show you those in a minute. And my favorite actually is demand forecasting. In detail, you covered that in your HR planning course. And that's simply looking at the load, the number of people you have, and the amount of work they're able to do, objective or subjective. And then if the amount of work that needs to get done increases, you increase relatively the number of people. And you also calculate if they're working at 100% load. And I'm going to be honest with you. Me as a faculty member, listen, Employment Standards Act requires you to work 44 hours a week. But in our environment, other than the actual classroom time, I'm physically in a classroom for 2 hours and 40 minutes. My boss, and it's almost a tradition now, says you're going to teach only 4 courses in the summer, 4 classes. Could be 2 courses, but 4 classes. And throughout the year, it's 5. Now, if you do the math, 5 classes times 2 hours, 40 minutes. So they rounded up to 3 hours, 3 hours. 5 times 3 is 15 hours. Really? I'm getting paid a full salary to be in a classroom for 15 hours? The Employment Standards Act says 44 hours. Anything above it is overtime. Yeah, but hang on. I don't just do work in the classroom, right? There's work to be done outside, to prepare, to research, to write, meet with students, deal with students, do all that administrative stuff like submitting marks and represent the college outside, doing news, interviews. So they have a whole formula. The union has a formula. It's called an SWF, Standard Workload Form. So for every contact hour that we spend in a classroom, you might multiply that by, let's say, 2.5. And then there's projects to be done. So if the college really looks at it, the optimal to get us to 44 hours of real work, because not everybody does research and all that, is probably 6 classes. I shouldn't say this. I shouldn't be recording this, right? I enjoy my 5 classes. But if they stretch it to 6, now they're getting me to work more at capacity and keep me under 44 hours. Because we get paid overtime if we do more than 44 hours. Up to 47 hours. So now, would it be a big issue for me to teach 6 classes? No, I'll do it. But if they're really complicated, high-end, like math courses or something, yeah, 6 might be a bit taxing. And at that point, you have to start realizing, do I just change the job for the sake of changing it to squeeze more out of a person? Do I run the risk of losing them or get demotivated? Yeah. And what other work doesn't get done because of that? And I think that's the way we're going to go in the short term. By the way, invariably, that means we don't need part-time faculty. I think we're headed there because of this. Like if 80 people just retired, come September, the same courses need to be run. Who gets to do them? But that was a really good example, without using numbers, of demand forecasting. I'll show you a calculation in a different slide, but have a look. This is an example staffing table for a golf club. I did 20 years in the golf industry, right? In Canada, there's 100,000 people who work in golf. It's a pretty significant industry. Politically sensitive, though. But not all of them work all year. So we do a staffing table. Now, up here, you've got the months of the year, June, July, February. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, so on. And I have acquired and required. So take a look. I require 1 general manager. I've acquired 1. And I need 1 throughout the year. GMs stay there all year round. But let's say around this month here, July, the GM left. So it means that I require 1, I have 0, and I have to start doing something to acquire that person. I foresee. I could see into the future. If the GM says I'm going to retire in September, well, there you go. You put a 0 in September. And you start talking to headhunters or what have you to replace that person. But some jobs, if you go down here, take a look at the back shop assistant. They're the people who fix your golf clubs and clean them. I need nobody in January, February, March. But in early April, I need 2. I'm going to acquire 2. I need 2, I got 2. You get the idea? Food and beverage cart. It's like a cart that comes around to give you drinks or food while you're playing golf. Early in the season in April, May, I might only need 2. But when the season starts picking up June, July, I might need 4 or 5. And the staffing table simply shows you, especially if you have data from the past, your activities. So if a golf course is running 40,000 rounds of golf a year, and they're generally in that 40,000 zone, you can predict the number of people you're going to need this year, next year. And by the way, to get really good people to work at a golf course, you'd think it's easy. It's not. Try finding a qualified director of golf or superintendent or groundskeeper. You don't want to ruin that lawn, so you want to make sure you grab the right people at the right time. Now, a related tool is called a succession plan. Again, you'll cover this in your planning course. It looks like an org chart. True. But it has more information. So take a look. I've got a general manager who's 62. Now that person, we asked them, what's your attitude towards retirement? And we even gave them information of what retirement might look like. We asked M. Jones. M. Jones says, I'm going to retire at the age of 65, which is typical. And on the chart, actually, you'd put 65. And you have to ask yourself, that's 3 short years. You could go plus or minus a year. Who's going to replace M. Jones? Maybe somebody under them. It could be the food and beverage manager. It could be the director of golf. I'll tell you from experience right now, it's not going to be the superintendent. The superintendent is a highly skilled, specific set of competencies, type of person. And they're not trained in management. It could be the food and beverage manager, but they have an expertise that should stay there. It's most likely the director of golf. And they said, yes, they do want the GM job. So now I start the process of grooming them. Grooming. It's kind of like the royal family, isn't it? I start developing them, coaching them to take on that job. Now, quite often, a business just might say, look, there's nobody here that I want to promote. I think the ideas are too stale. They have too much baggage they're carrying. They're too much part of the culture. We need to change things around. Then you go outside and you try to recruit a general manager. And quite often, by the way, that's where headhunters come in. At that level, they make good money, $100,000, $200,000 a year. You go outside. And the market for GMs is wide. It's not just local. It's North America pretty much. Now, let's get a little bit into forecasting. Don't get too bogged down with the numbers, okay? This is just a sample. If I have a few years of data, or let's say up to 2019, and I want to forecast the number of people I need in 2020, let's look at it this way. I used to have 50 people that produced 150,000 units. If you divide 150,000 by 50, you can tell how many units one person can produce. Then I increased the number of units, but for some reason I managed to get it done with just 47 people. We were paying a lot of overtime. The year after we increased, but we went up to 55 people. Right? That's the current number of staff. That doesn't mean we can produce that with 55 people, so we forecast that based on the math, 150,000 divided by 50, we will need around 65 people, ideally. Now, if you were to automate, bring in some automation, some equipment, or different, more streamlined processes, sure, you can use fewer people. But in 2023, we're forecasting production of 310,000 units. And according to that math, we're going to need about 103 people, more or less. Look at another example. Okay, if one employee, one person, one body works on one machine for 8 hours in one day, and in that day, that person can produce 12 units. So let's say they're making, watches, okay? 12 watches a day. If you need to produce 12 units in one day, you just need one person. Done. If you want to produce 10 times the number of units, 120 units in one day, you need 10 people, right? Times 10. Now, we're going to do this for a year, of course. We don't just do this for a day. and we'll just use a 250-day working year. Remember, we don't work on weekends typically. No overtime here. One person can produce 3,000 units a year. How do I get that? It's 250 days times 12 units in a day. That's 3,000 units. So if I need to produce in 1 year 300,000 units, that's 100 times more. That will be about 100 people. And then you fine tune and you adjust upwards and downwards. And it actually lets you see where automation could help you. Now you can produce the same number of units using fewer people, but then we have to use things like overtime or overwork a person, which is not a good idea. Now let's get right into recruitment. Wow, it took this long. It's good background. We have a demand now. We know why we need somebody. It's budgeted for. And we have a good job description. I mean, if you don't have a job description, what the heck are you looking for? Again, an engineer. Do you really know what an engineer is? If I were to ask you what the difference between an electrical, electronic, mechanical, civil design engineer is, could you tell me? Maybe not. So we have job descriptions. And in fact, a good recruiter would go and interview casually a person actually doing the job to find out the nuances, the nitty-gritty of what's required. You don't want to be a recruiter who just bases something on a document, although that's what happens quite often. But recruitment is simply the process of developing a pool of applicants, people who apply, the ones who are ready to work for you. Now, I got to tell you, there's a lot of people who are going to apply who really don't want the job, nor do they qualify. It's okay, grab their resume anyways. As soon as you get a chance to grab somebody's resume, get it, take it, reduce the cost of getting it. It's called an acquisition cost. Now, the result is an applicant pool, a pool of people you can choose from. And come on, the bigger the pool, the better. If I was producing a movie and I had to pick between actor 1 and actor 2, my pool is very limited. Too bad I have to pick one of them. Neither one is good. But if I had 1,000 actors willing to act in my movie, I'm pretty sure I can make a better decision. So the bigger the applicant pool, the more success I will have in converting them to candidates. And the more I have to choose from, the better choice I can make. I think that's universal. I think so. Listen, if you had to date somebody and there's only 5 people in the world, I mean, you got 1 in 20 chance of finding the right person. Or none of them are a right fit for you, but you have to pick somebody. But you've got 8 billion people on Earth who eventually at some point you can choose from. I mean, typically, I suppose. So recruitment is just simply a way to get people to apply. Now, here's the thing. That pool, where is it? Where's that pool that you can get applicants from? Is it local? Yeah. I mean, if I'm going to hire a security guard in my office building downtown, I'm pretty sure it's within the GTA. How far can they commute? I don't think you pay enough for a person to fly in every day or even for an interview. If you're looking for a CEO or an executive, it could be global. It could be worldwide. It could be national, international, regional. So in Seneca, I'll give you an example. When we recruit for a faculty member, get this. I mean, we're union, okay? So I'll explain the process again. First, we have to go and look at only union members. And our union is OPSU, Ontario Public Service Employees Union. And it's not just within Seneca. Obviously, we would give a Senecan better treatment, I suppose. More of a look at. But it's throughout the system, all over Ontario. And people do apply. But quite often, we don't get the right person. So a new faculty member right now has to have a PhD. Used to be just a PhD in something, but now it has to be a PhD related to what you're about to teach. That's what the government is making us do. That's a great example of a regulatory requirement initiating demand. In fact, because we offer degrees, 50% of our faculty who touch the degree have to be PhD. Now, I don't know about you, but have you ever heard of anybody getting a PhD in human resources? Oh yeah, of course, they do. in HR, in OB, in labor relations. But it's rare. It's very few people, not too many people. And in fact, when they do, their eyes are towards universities. They pay more prestige, I suppose. I'm not sure why. So, what makes us think we're going to grab that PhD locally, U of T? In fact, we haven't had one applicant from University of Toronto in all of these years I've been involved in recruiting, helping find a person. So what we do is we have to go wide. The first round doesn't work, so then we're allowed to go outside of the union. And the last 4 that I've sat in on, I got to tell you, the only applicants we're getting are international. So in other countries, because there's a lot of people wanting to get degrees, there are other countries who have a lot of people who get degrees that are related to HR. Something like it, human development, what it might be. And we have to choose from that applicant pool. And that in itself might have issues in terms of language, communication, experience, context. But there's a pool. It's wide. How wide do you cast the net? And you would know. If you're a recruiter, you will know the market. So in a few sessions, or we might already have done this, I'm not sure, we're going to get a guest speaker in. And he works for a headhunting agency. And he's going to explain to you how far and wide and how creative he has to be. Again, he might have already appeared. I don't know at what week this session will happen and when we could book him in. You're going to learn from him, and he's going to give you some creative, very creative ways to find people. By the way, good luck putting an ad in the paper and finding the right PhD. It's not working. So quite often, recruitment could be easy. I mean, if you need a machine operator, and your boss, some supervisor just told you right now, simply walk down to the factory floor, ask a machine operator, hey, do you know somebody in mind who can do this job who's a good person? It's called a referral, internal. And a person says, yeah, you call them right away, they come for an interview, within hours you've just hired a person. You can't do that for accountants or doctors or pharmacists, of course. You can go internal and ask people, but it's a longer process. Now, where do these candidates come from? We just talked about the globalized labor market. You really want to tap into trade associations. You want to tap into the traditional places where your applicants might hang out. Go to social media. Find out. LinkedIn, of course. You always scrape LinkedIn. Scraping LinkedIn means go and find people who have words, who posted words or ideas related to what you're looking for. But quite often, because it's such a big job for an HR department to do, we would hire a headhunter or a recruitment agency because they're tapped in. Just like, what do you call those? An agent in Hollywood. They know the actors. They know which one will fit with which part. Let them do the job. It costs money, a lot of it. Now, traditionally, recruitment sources are, well, existing employees just promote people, which will create a void lower down, a vacancy, but those are easier to fill. Referrals from your existing employees are really good. They might be biased. I mean, if it's your brother, you might be biased towards your brother, but remember, an existing employee doesn't want to take the risk of referring somebody who just might not work out. So it's a good, bad thing. Word of mouth, that's awesome. I mean, Google does that. Apple does it. Like I said, Google and Apple, they don't advertise for jobs, right? It's just word of mouth. Word gets out. I'm looking. Within a community, word spreads. South Asian community, if you're working in, let's say, a certain part of the city, all you have to do is tell a few people during lunch, hey, we're looking for machine operators or whatever it might be. I'm looking for an accountant. They'll go to their temple or their church. They'll spread the buzz. They'll go to their social clubs, talk amongst their family. In fact, people take a certain pride. You know, if you take pride in your company and you know the company's looking, you take pride and you broadcast to people that you think will work, saying, hey, look, I work for a great place. Come work for us. What do you think? I do that. As soon as I know we're looking for a faculty member, I start looking at people that I know that are good. Maybe partly just to protect my team. We talked about newspapers, radio, magazine, walk-ins. There's a sign outside the company that says we're looking. help wanted. Internet, which includes social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. And then you have paid services like Indeed, Monster. And also LinkedIn is paid, where you pay them to post your job and they advertise. So a lot of people will be on Monster looking all the time. HRPA, actually, the professional association, they have a service. And the cool thing with these services is if you, as a potential applicant, goes in and signals what types of jobs you're looking for, soon as I post my job when I'm looking for somebody, it'll alert you. So my message is targeted directly coming to you. Your own website. If you're a good, compelling organization with a good brand, simply putting out a job on your website, there'll be thousands of people who are keeping an eye on it. And again, make sure it's Web 2.0 where it's a two-way communication. You're automatically alerting people. Because that really good candidate, the one you really should have, maybe he's too busy researching and learning more and they're not on your website all the time. So make sure they can have alerts. Agencies, we talked about. Headhunters. Headhunters are more higher level jobs, executives. They charge a lot. Like typically, if we hired an agency to find one faculty member for us, I think the bill would be in that $40,000, $50,000 range. Staffing agencies, on the other hand, might only do not so high level people, temporary. I need somebody for a week, send somebody over. If you're looking for an entry-level HR job, I think a staffing agency is the way to go. In fact, I think all of you right now should make contacts with staffing agencies who can place HR people, have a relationship with these people. Because they're like I said, Hollywood agents, they will sometimes make you fit the role. They'll sell you. And you don't have to pay them anything. The organization does. One of my favorites is job fairs. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to a job fair. It's like, I guess, a building, like a convention center or hotel, with tables where different companies stand there. Hopefully they have a nice sign, brochures. And you go in because you're looking for work. So there might be a job fair for IT people or engineers or nurses. And then you would go as an engineer. You'd look at all the different companies, talk to them, submit your resume. Maybe it's on an iPad, you just type it in, or you give them your paper resume. And that's a great way to concentrate a lot of people all in one place. But again, it's not necessarily fair to people who are immobile, who can't get to that place. So you'd always have an alternate that during the job fair also allow people to apply virtually, online. Now you specifically can take advantage of job fairs because you're HR people. And I tell you all the time, I tell my students all the time, if you ever see a job fair for any industry at all, go to it. Maybe not with your resume, but certainly just to get names of people so you can connect with them on LinkedIn and send them an email. Because who's that on the other side of that table? If you go to an engineering job fair, the other side of the table has an HR person. They're recruiting. They're one of you. And you just might be at the right place at the right time. Networking, by the way, I think you've heard of it. Networking is awesome. There was an event a couple months ago. The HR Connects. Networking is awesome. And if you're one of those shy people who doesn't know how to network, figure it out. Figure out some ways just to get into a group, just to talk to people, whether it's virtual networking or face-to-face networking. Don't be afraid to have just 2-3 talking points. Find something common with the person who might hire you or put in a good word. And always send an email. You know what I like to do? If I met somebody that I think could be useful to me from a employment point of view, is I would then find out at least something about them. They like golfing, they like fishing, something they said. I would then find an article or YouTube video, or TED Talk is more professional. And I would take the time after a few days to email it to them and say, by the way, nice to meet you. Thank you for the time. I just found this thing you might find interesting. And you know what? The purpose is they might not respond. A lot of people don't. Don't worry about that. But your name just might be remembered. And then you send them a LinkedIn invite. I don't know what you call it, but kind of friend or what do you call it? Connect, I guess. Connect. And chances are they might connect. You're taking a cold relationship to a warm relationship. Academic institutions, if you're looking for people, if you're a recruiter, go to the places that educate. There's free career services. You can put jobs out there. And then last one is informal networks. So you're all part of the HR Network Society. That's the one I started years ago. It's got 5,000 people on it. And I get jobs all the time. I have another one for my supply chain logistics people. So it doesn't cost the recruiter anything to send me a job. I send it back out for free. But if I see candidates who are awesome, I just might take the time to tell them, look, you're going to get resumes, but here's one that you really need to hire right now. It happens all the time. So my HR Network Society typically sends out over 150 jobs a year. And although I don't hear back from everybody, I know it's around 30 or 40 in a year who actually get jobs out of it. So try to join as many informal networks as possible. HRPA, when you become a member, there's always chapter meetings. Go to them. There's some great people, a lot of people who would love to kind of informally mentor you and put you in touch with other people. That's how it works. You got to put in the time. And it's not just about getting a job. It's about getting the meaningful, high-quality job. So once we have a posting out there, or when you have a posting written, a good posting, a compelling posting, almost like a job ad, an advertisement for a product even, then you have to decide, how am I going to broadcast the word out? Well, we just talked about how to do that, right? Quite often it could simply be put it on your company website, take out an ad. But when you start doing that, you should start keeping track of the costs. I mean, why wouldn't you? Because all the costs associated with the recruitment and selection of a particular person, you want to weigh that cost, that acquisition cost, against the actual effectiveness of the person you hired. So the costs can include the obvious, like any advertisements, fees that Indeed or Monster or JobShark charged you, fees for a job fair. So a job fair table could cost hundreds or even up to $2,000 for the day. If you had to pay for meals, travel, accommodation. For higher level jobs, we fly people in, we put them up in a hotel. Supplies. Even right down to data input time. So if you put 3 hours into inputting stuff into applicant tracking systems, keep a record of it. And the applicant tracking system itself. So we're going to start looking at Taleo. Actually, we already did. And within it, there's a place to keep track of costs. And it will actually match up all the costs with every single recruitment effort to say, my acquisition cost per person was this. Or you can actually say, I spent $50,000 and everybody I selected did not work out at all. That was a waste of time. So in a separate video, I'm talking about the assignment that you're going to be doing in part 2 of the course. Right away, you can start looking at the posting you're going to write. It's for a law clerk. The job description's given to you. Can you just start looking at least some good postings for law clerk out on the internet? Please don't copy, paste, plagiarize. That defeats the purpose. Start writing one. Little tiny posting. How big should a posting be? It could be a paragraph to start with and then more detail below. Start writing that, and we're going to take care of Oracle Taleo applicant tracking system for you. Now, along the way though, wouldn't it be smart, in the spirit of evidence-based decision making, wouldn't it be smart to apply some metrics to the whole recruitment effort? We're going to go later into the selections. We're going to group the two. So the metrics in this area are simple. I mean, here, I'll give you an example. What is the total cost to hire that one person? That's a metric. What is the cost per person to hire that individual? How many resumes did I get, my applicant pool? How many made it to the next step, which is after basic screening? What percentage? That's called a yield ratio. What percentage made it to the background check? What percentage passed the employment test? What percentage made it to interview 1, interview 2, and how many are you left with? And along the way, how long it took. How many days or weeks or months did it take from the moment you got the requisition to hire somebody, the demand, to you actually filling it? So look at this chart down here. It's a percentage of time the average resume spends in each status. So this is just a general American kind of number. So take a look, right? What percentage? 15% of the time is in the whole application process. I mean, maybe that could be improved a lot by using e-recruitment, electronic digital recruitment. You know, when people don't just submit resumes, it's a whole process of allowing people to complete a resume online and then having that data go right into an applicant tracking system. So the applicant tracking system can electronically filter out those people that don't qualify, and then applying more and more filters to narrow down the number of candidates. And along the way, keeping track of costs, scheduling interviews, keeping notes, and applicant tracking systems with the layer of artificial intelligence, which we'll talk, or I think we talked about. Those systems can actually start predicting which candidates are more likely to succeed in the next round. But look at this, 37% of the time, which is, by the way, an average of 34 days, from the moment we got a request to hire to the moment somebody was hired. 34 days might be a bit long. But a majority of the time, 37% are in this bottleneck called hiring manager review, which, by the way, is true across the board. That's not in HR. That's the actual manager who's busy. They have a job to do, and they're not initially trained. And they spend an awful lot of time. We can possibly narrow that down just a bit. So I'll give this document, this chart to you in the notes as well. Remember, keep reading the notes that I've posted. But these are some of the common type of metrics that we use. There's more. There's another document I can give you. But, for example, the time to fill a position, how many days, weeks, hours. Turnover rate. So if you hired people and you're doing performance measures and looking at how many people left, how many people left within 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. So that means you're doing your job at recruiting and selecting people. They might be good people. Their performance is high. But for some reason, they're not staying. They're using your company as a training ground. Or maybe your compensation package or your work environment just isn't conducive to loyalty. Right? The absenteeism of new recruits, the costs we talked about. How many people had certain performance ratings after the fact? And then there's other things like more subjective, the quality of the hire. And again, that gets down to performance and competency mapping. But certain attitudes like job satisfaction, involvement, it's what we call attitudes and motivations. Their fit with the culture, their innovative capability, their creativity. Now, we mentioned acquisition cost. In case you didn't know. Let's say I received 80 applications. So I had to spend money to get these applications. It's never really free. Let's say it cost me $1,600. So $1,600 divided by 80 equals $20. My acquisition cost per applicant was $20, which might be cheap. I mean, I'm a believer cost should be in the single-digit dollars. I mean, I shouldn't, if my company is popular and I've got a great image, I shouldn't have to pay too much to get my applicants. Now, if you're getting applications through agencies or headhunters, of course, they do the work for you, but they're just going to send you an overall bill in the thousands. But if I'm looking for machine operators, I'm not sure why it's costing me $20 an applicant to get it. I bet you a company like Google probably spends under $5 per person applying because they don't have to do much to get them to apply. So in line with your recruitment strategies, make sure that you're leveraging the brand, the image. Now, look, I do this in a physical class. I want to do it right now. Is what attracted me to Seneca College. I mean, when I was younger, I might have had the attitude I'll take the first job that comes around. For me, that wasn't the case. I started off, I was a consultant, and I took on teaching because I caught the bug. They asked me to do a part time course at another college. I loved it. And I was trying to balance my consulting, literally flying in and out. Literally, so many times I flew in at Pearson from Vancouver, and I did my class, sometimes barely made it because I made a commitment to do class, and the next day I'd fly back. That happened several times. I didn't have to do it, but I caught the bug. I wanted to do this. I wanted to create a movement, a way of getting the word out there. Maybe I'm good at it, maybe I'm not. You be the judge, okay? But then Seneca comes along, and I was here. I was just doing part time work. I loved it. And my boss says, listen, there's a job coming up. And that was in the days where, boss could say, jobs for you, take it. I suppose. I'm not sure that's the truth. And I kind of said, no, I like it the way it is. I like my part time work. I like to be free to do my work, my consulting work. And I taught at 2-3 colleges at that time. It was fun. I loved it. It was challenging. So then somebody else took the job. And then my boss comes back a few months later saying, look, Ash, this time we're having another job. You got to take it. I said, no, I'm happy. Go, just take it, or you can't have Seneca. Because the full-timer, the tenured person we will hire, means they'll be doing your job. There will be no part-time. And I freaked out. I go, oh my God, I need Seneca. I need Seneca. I didn't need the other college I taught at. I needed Seneca. Why? And I didn't live anywhere near Seneca. It took me like almost 50 minutes to get here. But at that moment, I asked myself, why am I so sad about leaving Seneca? Is it the logo? Is it that part of the brand, the image? Is it that nice, beautiful red logo? I don't even know what Seneca meant. Seneca is a indigenous group, but it's also a Roman god. I think it's either Greek or Roman god or some superhero. I'm not really sure. But it wasn't that. It wasn't the logo. And in fact, when I was working here part-time back in the day, our workspace was horrible. It was like, hello, 1960s called. They said, don't give us our stuff back. We don't want it. It was bad. But I think it was the people, the challenge, the type of programming, the courses that Seneca offered, and the type of students that they were attracting. I kind of liked it. So anyways, to cut it short, I did take that full-time job. I actually moved a lot closer. I live like 6 minutes away now, or 12 minutes, sorry. And I love Seneca. I would never leave it. In fact, I brag about it to other people so they would come and work for us. Because Seneca keeps giving me good quality students. And they let me teach the stuff I really want to teach. But the more important thing is they give me freedom, academic freedom of thought and expression. I can write whatever I want, and they fund it. They fund my equipment. I do virtual reality. And in doing that, I can bring students on board. So what is it? Seneca's not paying me anymore. In fact, I'm losing money every year. My pay raise is less than inflation. They can't pay me anymore. I don't get bonuses. I have to share an office, albeit with an awesome person, Lisa. But Seneca's doing something to attract me and keep me here forever. I think I'll retire at 75 if I can still walk and talk. So food for thought. I want you to make, in addition to the sources we just talked about, a list of applicants, a list of sources of applicants. Where can you get applicants from? Where are they? And I want you to picture the brain, the mind, the attention of an applicant. Person ready, willing, and able to work for you. Where are they? Where is their mind? Where's their attention right now? If it's glued to a particular TV show, buy an advertisement on that TV show. I don't know. Do a product placement. I don't know. They're probably not. What part of social media are they? Where do they hang out? Who are they? Where are they? I want you to think, brainstorm amongst yourself. And for each source, I want you to make some brief notes, mental notes. You don't have to write this down. Don't submit this to me. Make notes about the types of jobs you would recruit using that particular source. So for example, if you found the source would be University of Toronto Faculty of Commerce, put posters up in that lobby. That's fine. That's a good source. There's a place downtown, I don't know if you knew this, called the Madison Pub. It's on a road called Madison near University of Toronto. And back in my day, that's where all the lawyers used to hang out. I used to work at the law firm as well. Now, I never ended up at the law firm because I used to hang out at the Madison as well. But I just figured out it's a great hangout joint for lawyers. Upstairs, not downstairs. Now, if you're recruiting for a type of lawyer, that's a place to start the buzz. How you would do it, that's something you'll figure out. But how do you network with people there? Think about it. Now, it's no longer that. I don't know who hangs out there anymore, but find out where people are. Do they go to certain conferences? Do they shop at certain places? You'll be shocked. You'll be surprised. And by the way, companies like Google and Facebook, when they do data mining, they make their billions by providing this data to you. They analyze it. So if you were to commission Google to find out where this type of a professional person, what did they do? What are their likes and their attitudes and their motivations towards consumption? You can actually target that side of it. Play strategic ads. Have their attention delivered right to where their attention is. You might want to hire somebody to help with that. Why aren't you going to high schools? Think about it. Why not start to build a brand up front? Apple and Google are very good at doing that. Why do you think they don't pay money for recruitment? But I want you to think about other organizations other than Apple or Google. That's almost become a stereotypical thing. Now, I want to work for Apple, I want to work for Google because they have a slide in their lobby. But find other organizations that have a super strong brand that organically, fluidly attracts people to them. Who are these? Is it a Deloitte? KPMG? Is it the government? You love aircraft? You want to work for Boeing? I don't know. Think about it. And then ask yourself, what did they do? Or what do they do to be so popular? What have they done? Because their marketing department doesn't just promote their product. They promote the company to get the right people. What about younger people? How early can you get them? Develop that mindset. I want you to practice looking at different job descriptions and postings as well. And like I said, just whatever you're interested in or related to an industry you might want to work for. And then start writing some postings. Be creative about writing postings. I know there's an assignment to do it. And you have to write questions as well. And then for that particular job, how can you get creative about recruiting? Things like sporting events, free product at a mall. That's a great technique. Give out your product at malls, but then in it say, look, there's a website, go look at the jobs we have. Influencers on social media, that's new. I don't think we've quite figured out how to leverage that part of technology yet. But why not? In fact, why don't you become an influencer on social media who can just place the right word for your company and people start applying? In the next session, our last session before the second half, we're going to get into screening, which is part of the selection. Types of screens, or the type of screen you would use, employment testing. Although there's a whole chapter on employment testing in the second half, I'm at least going to start you off on it. We're going to get deeper into selection ratios, yield ratios. I mentioned them earlier. And even the use of social media, the ethics, the legality of social media for screening purposes. Not recruitment, screening. Remember, the application process develops the applicant pool. When you filter them through minimal requirements, they move over to selection. They are now candidates. And from the candidate pool, you're going to make job offers to do a hire. We'll see you in the next session.